Yeah.
Somebody join in?
Yeah, Andrea.
Andrea, do me a favor and test your audio for me, please.
Testing, testing.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you. We're live.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order of the City of Columbia, Illinois Plan Commission for Monday, March 8th, 2021. And with that, we need to do a roll call. Secretary Missler, when you're ready.
Doug Garmer,
Here?
Hal Hoppy,
Here.
Pete Ingold,
Here.
Beth Cutter Sanchez, Amy Missler here, Tony Murphy,
Here.
Lauren Noby, Will Trowbridge,
Here.
Andrea Yoakum.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. And with that, I would like to call item 3A to your attention. That is the approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was December 14th, 2020. And has everybody had a chance to look at those notes, those minutes? And if so, do you have any questions, comments, complaints, changes? If so, please speak up. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes, if somebody would be so kind.
I'll make the motion. This is Will.
Thanks, Will. Second?
I second it.
Thank you, Pete. And Amy, whenever you're ready, please.
Doug Garmer,
Yes.
Hal Hoppy,
Yes.
Pete Ingold,
Yes.
Amy Missler, yes, Tony Murphy,
Yes.
Will Trowbridge,
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Alrighty, gonna move on to the next item, which is public input. Scott, has anybody requested any? Nothing? No comments? Anything?
No, sir. No requests to address the body.
Okay, appreciate that. And obviously, no public hearings today. New business, we have none. Unfinished business, we have none. Committee reports, we have none, correct?
Have no committees, so.
All right, so then I would call to your attention item 9A, which is staff reports and communication. This is the presentation and discussion of planning initiatives for the upcoming budget year. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Economic Development, Scott Dudeke. Scott?
That'd be community development. Thank you,
I'm
Doug.
sorry.
That's all right. No, I just wanted to take a minute and kind of give everybody an update on the initiatives we've got going on for the coming year, or at least that I am pursuing as we prepare our budget right now. So the first thing I'd like to bring to your attention that I'm working on, that I have submitted a request for, and that is to increase your pay as a plan commissioner. Chairman Garmer had mentioned to me a number of months ago that he had spoken with somebody on another city's plan commission, and the subject of pay came up, and we found that we were getting that Columbia's pay was about half as much as that community. So after I poked around and did a little research, I found that indeed our plan commission is being paid less than a lot of our surrounding communities. So I did put in a request to increase the plan commission pay to $60 per meeting for plan commissioners, and then $75 per meeting for officers, which most of the other communities do have a tiered pay like that as well, so that the officers get slightly more pay per meeting. And that'll put us about in line with most other communities. that are in the general vicinity. So there is that. Any questions or comments on that?
So is that up for a vote with the council, or how does that? work?
That's going to be requested through the budget.
Okay,
And then that would be updated by ordinance. Every year we, after the budget is approved, we do a corresponding pay and compensation ordinance that sets all the pay for all city employees as well as elected and appointed officials, so.
and
that would
when
be
is
part
that
of
due?
That'll be in May,
May.
assuming it passes.
Okay,
Which I see
Appreciate
no
that.
reason for it not to, but,
yeah,
you know, you never know.
appreciate you being responsive to that,
Absolutely.
pushing that forward.
Speaking of pushing things forward, Doug also asked me a question about something that I realized since we hadn't met in a while, I hadn't had the opportunity to kind of follow up with you on. As you'll recall, back in October, we discussed some draft ordinances, a draft ordinance to amend the zoning code to allow for domestic chickens. So we had a pretty good discussion, and I brought the results of that discussion to council and discussed it with them. And after some further discussion, they kind of took it wasn't a formal vote, but kind of a straw poll, and there was only one of the aldermen that was supporting the moving forward with it. So not only did they say they wouldn't approve it, but they directed me to stop working on it because they had no intent. They said, there's no sense in you continuing to work on it if we're not going to approve it. So that died.
Okay.
So that can be looked at again, at which point we pick up the zoning code again. And I'll follow up with that in just a moment. Another thing that I've got going on right now is I've already actually, and I'll let you, although it's not in the zoning code, the Plan Commission does serve as the Sign Graphics Committee as well. So I will let you know that I have completed a draft of updating the sign code, okay? That's particularly important for a couple of reasons. One reason is that the way our current sign code classifies signs has been deemed unconstitutional. Not us particular, but essentially we use a similar classification as most communities did previous to the Supreme Court ruling that nullified it, which is, it regulates more by the function of the sign. For example, you might say an advertising sign or a real estate sign or a political sign or a for sale sign. Well, what the Supreme Court said was essentially if you have to read a sign to regulate it, then that's unconstitutional because you can't regulate the content. That's a free speech issue. So essentially what we've had to do is really, since the basis of having a sign code is to promote, the aesthetics of the community, to allow opportunities for free speech without, but an appropriate manner of freedom of speech, that basically if you have any way of regulating by content, then that would not be constitutional. So we've had to go to a system where essentially what you're regulating by are the physical attributes of the sign and where the sign's going to be located in terms of like zoning district or in conjunction with certain types of uses. Instead of saying, for example, since you're seeing a lot of them out nowadays, I'll just say political sign, okay? Everything might be a yard sign, so you're regulating the size of a yard sign because it wouldn't be regulated by the type of, like political sign, it's regulated by the fact that it's being placed in the yard. So it's a yard sign, so it has, and obviously, what is the size of and the number of yard signs, obviously they're going to allow smaller signs and fewer of them in, say, a residential zoning district than you would in a commercial zoning district in all likelihood. So those are the sorts of considerations. So I do have the first draft is at the city administrator's desk, just waiting for a a go-over. We'll run it up the flagpole with the city attorney, and then I'll circle around to you, since you are the sounding board for variances and things like that, and then we'll, once we have you, then we'll take it up to council for further consideration. So that'll be the first thing. Now, that doesn't require a public hearing or anything like that. Since it's not part of the zoning code, it would just be a straight up, yeah, we're recommending it more as not even as an official duty per se, but since you do deal with it, I thought it would be wise to have you all get the first kind of a regulatory glance, if you will, kind of an agency level review. You'll get the first shot at it, so.
When are you looking to have that done?
Once again, I've got the draft. It'll just be a matter of, I'm certain minor revisions by the time I get it back from city attorney and
Okay.
city administrator
I mean,
office,
so you're
so.
thinking like at a regular meeting in April?
Yeah, hopefully. But, I can't dictate his schedule, so
Sure,
as quick as he gets around to it.
okay.
Let's see, that's sign code. Okay, so let me talk about code update. And what we're going to do, as you're aware, and maybe you're not aware, but since I've been here, staff had been underway with a zoning update and had made some progress, as well as a subdivision code update, okay? And when I got hired, I said that needs to stop. You can't, because your comprehensive plan is 15 years old. It needs to be updated before you can do codes, because those are implementing components of the comprehensive plan. If you're comprehensive, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good to do a wholesale, update of a zoning code if you don't really know if it's going to be implementing the vision that the community has for itself over the long run. So now that, and of course he's been here for a while, but we obviously weren't going to pick that up last year during COVID. You can't do public meetings and anything like that. So anyway, I do have the endorsement of the city administrator to hopefully move forward with that. It's just a matter of making sure we have sufficient budget to move forward with the comp plan update, which I think we can move forward with. And going along with that, actually last year we did have a new a planning position added to the community development staff that will allow me to free up more time to actually serve as the project manager on a comprehensive plan update, and then after that zoning, and after that subdivision. But of course, with the uncertainty that has been COVID, not knowing how it might affect our bottom line, obviously new hiring was put on freeze, and I basically have been doing all the day-to-day planning type stuff myself. And that takes a full-time job just to keep on top of that. So the plan would still be, and what the request again this year for the budget is going to be, to go ahead and get a new planner on board to take on some of the day-to-day activities of taking in applications, writing staff reports, answering questions as calling, and doing the sort of, daily routines that staff would typically do. So I could focus on, almost as serving as an in-house consultant on actually getting the codes done. But we are going to have to hire a consultant for some of in particular, I'd like to get, the plan would be to hire a PR or some sort of firm to help with the public engagement side of things, particularly in the age of COVID, because whatever we do, we will have to integrate some sorts of electronic, remote types of engagement activities, along with your typical open houses and those sorts of things. Because I think it's safe to say there's still a fair amount of uncertainty as to what could happen with COVID, and there are still a lot of people who are frankly concerned to show up at a public meeting even if we were to allow them again tomorrow, which for obvious and good reasons. So I want to make sure we get somebody on board that can guide us through what's going to be most effective in getting the input we need from the community, because really the end game of that is figure out what is it the community wants from its local government. How do we want to grow? How do we want our services to grow to keep up the pace as we grow? It answers all those questions. So we're going to need to get it's going to be a fairly robust engagement process that we go into. So the other thing I want to get on board is I want to get a GIS consultant on board to help with the GIS and do a pretty robust analysis on multiple factors, including location, size of development, cost of development, so that we have a better picture as we when we lay out our future land use plan through the comprehensive planning process, that it's guided not only by, oh, well, guess what use is there and what's next to it, but also that we have an idea of if we allow a little higher density versus a little lower density or whatnot, how might that benefit the community overall in terms of impacts to services, costs to do business, costs to develop, things like that, so we can have a more educated or to better inform the decision-making processes. And maybe if we do that with an eye on the overall cost and not just who's doing it or where it is or what it's next to, I think that'll lead to better decisions made in the long run for everyone as far as what gets built where.
Was this, curious if the hiring of the community development person and then the consultants, was that already part of the budget you said for?
It has been part of the plan. The planning position was budgeted for last year, but once again with COVID, we were directed, basically there was a freeze on all new hiring until we knew what was going to happen. And then on the comp plan, it was something that was planned on but didn't actually get budgeted because we already were in COVID at that point. So there were some things that got that just never made it into the budget that we were hoping would. So hopefully that'll get done this year. And we do have a funding stream for the consultants that we would bring on board. So do that.
Cool.
So then over the next couple years, the idea would be, because a full, I was a consulting planner for 10 years before I came into this position. And your typical comprehensive planning process is about a 1 year long process in most communities of this size. You might go a little bit longer if you're, a larger community, and a little bit shorter if you're a smaller community. This size community, about a year is pretty much on target. So I would expect that to be about a 1 year process with the comprehensive plan. And then what the idea would be then to turn around and the next following 2 years, the first year do the zoning code and the second year do the subdivision code. And that way we get everything updated to, geared specifically to implement what the comprehensive plan has as far as the land use and development. So that's really the initiatives I've got coming up for this year that I wanted to discuss with you. But that's it on the throw it out there for your discussion. Any comments or questions you might have, I'd be love to have that discussion with you.
I think you're going about it right with attacking the comprehensive plan first, because it makes no sense to try to patch it and cobble it together if you're going to if the other one needs a rewrite because it's so dated,
Well, and, after we feel like we've kind of, I say we staff, at the staff level, we feel like we've made the most I guess most emergent issues, we fixed the most emergent issues with the zoning code. Sorry, I could have sworn I put that on vibrate, but I think we fixed the most emergent issues, that we had. And the problem that I had with the way it was going about, other than the fact that it wasn't based off of an update to the comprehensive plan so that you knew you could feel confident in pushing it forward, is that it was essentially just kind of tweaking the old code, which it just needs to be rewritten. It is poorly written, and that's not to place blame on anybody. It's obviously the byproduct of something that was written and then reactionary, revisions over time that just led it to, some of it just being darn near incomprehensible. I know Pete, you can attest to that. How many times did we have to, sit in a hearing or something reading parts of code, and it's like, what even does that mean?
Nobody knows.
And it's like, I can give my best guess based on my, 20 some odd years of planning experience, but even that, I can't tell exactly if that's what the author meant. So, that's what we're stuck with. And then, anyway, you guys see it, it needs to be done. And that was my issue with it the whole time. It needs to be torn down and rewritten from the ground up. These incremental changes are not gonna do it, so.
What's the effective shelf life for a comp plan? Is it like 5 to 7, something like that?
Typically, what you would do is you would do minor updates.
Right.
What the typical planning recommendation is, every 10 years, you do a new comprehensive plan,
Right.
and in the interim, you would do minor updates as needed. Primarily, just verify your, if nothing else, for example, it might depend on when, the time frame when you're doing your update. Let's say you're halfway through that 10-year period, you did your comp plan 5 years ago, and now the new census numbers come out. Well, that's a good opportunity let's do a minor update. Let's see if our projections were on track with the actual census numbers. We can update that. Now, does that cause us to, go back and look at anything? Maybe there's a recession, and it dramatically affects your tax revenue. So you have to take a look at, okay, so we were on course to do this, to grow in this manner, to add, 20 police officers in the next 10 years, say. Well, that's obviously not going to happen now, so maybe you adjust your numbers. That's just, just examples. That's not the case here, just make that clear. Those are just examples to show what, that way you're able to keep it current without having to start from scratch every time. But about every 10 years, you should start from scratch. Make sure, and literally start from scratch. And the way I see it, so I've been here almost 3 years now in the city of Columbia. And the one thing that I think is perhaps most important is I don't get a tremendous sense of identity with Columbia. What is our vision? What is Columbia? I can't go to a document that says this is the vision we have for ourselves. I think we need to start off that exercise with, we need to start that project off with a pretty thorough visioning exercise that we engage the whole community and figure out, well, what is it we want to be known for? What is it that people, when somebody thinks of Columbia, what is it you think, what image is it that we need to ingrain in their mind? What is it we want to be known for? And then that needs to be the driving force behind the entire plan, so that everything, all the policies in there are supporting that vision of what the community wants for itself. So I think that's key, because the last comprehensive plan, it talks about vision, but it's got this flowery language about, scenic vistas, and it's like, okay, that's all well and good. Let's boil it down to a one-sentence statement of who we are and what we want for ourselves. That's what you want out of a vision. What are we? And what does it say about you? So that, and then, you know, all of the policies and the goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan then wind up in support of that vision to achieve that broad overarching goal. I mean, visions can be fairly generic, but still be effective at driving what the overall direction of the, you know, public policy is at the city level too. So, anyway.
Yeah, I think your timing's right for sure, especially coming out of this lockdown we've had for the downturn in business for last year, you know, because I can see this town, you know, growing exponentially, especially if economy continues to do well. And it's a good time to get this done. If it's a year, we're looking at next year at this time, right?
Yeah, I mean,
That comes quick.
yeah, a year from when we start about, so,
Yeah, right.
you know, that's what the timeline will be.
Yep.
And in my experience, I haven't run across, I mean, this town's more than willing to share their opinions with you. You just have to give them the forum, right? So hopefully we'll get that forum out there. You know.
Have you thought about ways that you're gonna do that? Is it gonna be like interactive surveys and mailers? Explain.
I mean, that's the reason why I want to get a specialty kind of PR or communications firm on board. Obviously, I've got experience doing all of the above, given what my experience is. But these are changing times.
Right.
And we never, you know, even just 3 years ago when I stopped being a consultant, we weren't doing the remote engagement sorts of things that we're doing even today. I mean, we wouldn't have been doing a meeting like this. With Zoom. They might have been broadcast on the local access cable television or whatever, but there weren't any options for anybody watching us to participate in the meeting. Now we have those opportunities. So I'm trying to find somebody who can help us be somewhat cutting edge, but in a way that's not just simply for the flash and not just to say, hey, we did this when it wasn't cool, but to actually drive the engagement so that we get quality engagement.
Good results. Right?
Exactly. We want the more and the higher quality engagement you're able to get from the community. Obviously, the better your plan represents what your community is and wants to be. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be, and there are a lot of new tools that are intended specifically for community engagement that are only, you know, in the last couple of years that I don't even have any experience with using. So hopefully, you know, somebody that knows what they're doing can bring that, you know, that does that for a living and that's their specialty, can bring us some guidance and some expertise in that area as far as how to best get that participation from the community.
I could see them using more than one tool, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, even, I mean, I'm familiar, you know, I use social media, Facebook more than Twitter, to be frank with you. I've never been much of a Twitter guy. But I've used social media in conjunction with websites and with SurveyMonkey, you know, quite extensively, you know, in the last 10 to 15 years. But that's not even cutting the mustard anymore.
Right.
But, you know, I'm familiar with some of the techniques you use to, you know, get better and drive higher quantity feedback.
Right.
But not just quantity. I want quality too. So I want to be able to dig into the questions and determine, well, what does this mean? What do the answers mean for our community, and what is it the community wants to see?
Yep.
What do they expect of us as their local government to provide them?
Right.
You know.
There's gonna be that certain demographic that is low tech, for lack of a better word, so it'd be good to try to work them into the mix as well, because their opinions are valid, and they just may not be up on the latest and greatest technologies.
Yeah, that's true. And one of the things I like to try to do too, in the last 3 comprehensive plans I did, I also had some engagement at the local high school too.
Yep.
So I want to figure out a good way to get feedback from a younger demographic as well, because let's face it,
That's a good idea.
one of the critical economic development questions that every economic developer faces is how do we keep our youth in our community, right, after they leave school?
I'll give them a chance.
I've never lived in a community where they didn't try to answer that question, right?
Right.
So we need to hear from them. What's it going to take to
Yeah.
keep you here? If you don't ask them, and
That's a great idea.
and let me tell you, I've gotten some very good quality feedback from high school age groups in the past. I mean, if you don't know, you'd be surprised how smart some of these kids are and how willing they are to share their thoughts with you on what would be in the community's best interest. So I plan on definitely engaging in some form or fashion. Hopefully, even maybe as some sort of structured setup with the school district. So.
Right. That's a great idea, I think. I mean, give them some ownership in it, and they, like you said, want to be part of the community. What would it take to keep you here and your skill set here and, raise your family or come back here or whatever after college?
Right.
But yeah, give them some ownership for sure.
Yeah,
I believe in that.
100%.
Ask my kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, this is Lauren, and I apologize. I joined the meeting late, so you may have already said this, but I know everyone's working on the budget. Is there a time frame of when we would hire someone to do the comprehensive plan and all that? Because I know you said a year to make the plan, but what's the time frame for hiring someone? And again, I know we've got the election and the budget, but I was just curious if that was in the works too.
Yeah. There hasn't been a time frame set. Ideally, we would be able to hire the position as quickly as possible, so that then I could focus on writing the request for proposals that we need to get the couple of consultants that we need on board to support staff in the planning efforts.
Gotcha. And I love the idea about getting the high school kids involved. And this is probably getting way ahead of ourselves, but I'd love to get their input on how we can help them now too. Like I know we have our amazing parks and everything, but that would be wonderful how we can, I see them playing by the park and the tennis and basketball courts by my house all the time. I'd love to hear their input on what we could do in addition to that to keep them entertained, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are ways we could get them involved more. Not many people talk about it, but I think we should, because they're, like I said, it's been my experience that they've been a tremendous asset to any part of the planning process that I've gotten them involved in. So, I mean, if there are other ways we could get them involved, I will say this though. As with anybody, there's a little bit of fatigue when you try to use too much. You have to keep your interactions with a younger group even a little more sparing, at least in my experience, because they've got so much other stuff on their plates nowadays. They can't just be focused on, well, hey, I've got that meeting. Let's go talk about the city. They've got plenty of other stuff to spend time on too. So but if you have some specific ideas of what you'd like to look into, or the kind of input that you feel are needed, I mean, I plan on using the plan commission in committees to hopefully like 3 or 4 of you on a subcommittee rather, to kind of steer specific aspects, like maybe an economic development sort of committee, maybe a land use specific sort of committee. So I'll need to, and assuming, for example, a Parks and Recreation Committee, if that was something that you'd be interested in, which I'm guessing, probably knowing you a little bit now, that might be one you'd be interested in.
Just a little.
Sorry, I'm pointing over there because I'm looking at you there. I should probably be pointing at the.
You're fine.
Anyway, yeah, that's something to keep in mind too. That you in those committees, you will have the ability to influence, and we'll be using you as a sounding board as what questions need to be asked.
I would love that. Yeah.
And I
I think that's a wonderful idea.
I think most of you would be willing and would want to do that to some area that fits your maybe a little bit more of your interest. So I haven't fully fleshed out. I'm just that's the way that I've done the processes in the past. I wouldn't expect our process to work out much different, with the exception that like I said, I really want to get somebody on board that can help me reach everybody. Especially using the technology to help reach everybody. So we'll flesh out those ideas as we get a little deeper into the process. But if any of you do have any other ideas or questions that you think need to be asked, or you even just, I'm always open for suggestions and comments and, constructive criticism. Once again, strong on the constructive, please. No. Any ideas you have about any of things that we deal with, you're always welcome, and I hope you all know that, to share your thoughts with me. I want to hear from you. You're in the position you are for a reason, and I'd be wasting that if you didn't share your thoughts with me sometimes outside of this venue. So, I would hope that maybe going forward, maybe I do hear from some of you a little bit more who might have strong opinions on one way or another, on one thing or another.
Be careful what you wish for, Scott.
I was getting ready to.
No, not at all.
I think you're really on the right track, though, with the high school thing.
Absolutely.
I'll give you for example, I'm on the board of Human Sports Services over in Waterloo. They've come up with the same sort of idea of trying to get a youngster, a high school kid or somebody involved in the board in some form or fashion, either on a committee or as a junior board member. And I don't know if the plan was I don't know how they were going to flesh that out. They were still trying to figure out who to talk to in the various school districts, but other groups or organizations are doing that too. You know, so it's a great idea. And I don't know, maybe it's student council. I'm sure you'd have to obviously touch base with the principal or the superintendent, somebody.
The last one I did was we worked with the student council.
Right.
And they were tremendous, because, those tend to be kids that are engaged in things
They're
anyway.
engaged,
That are, some of the
Future
more.
leaders, man.
Yeah,
Future
exactly. That's a good way to put it,
Yeah.
the future leaders. And they were, that was a fantastic group to work with.
Pumps
They
them
were
up.
just bright kids,
Yep.
had questions that you wouldn't believe. It's like, okay, I don't get this good of questions from PhDs, okay?
It's
And
a
it
different
was
set of eyes coming in there and a different
Yep.
generational set of eyes, which is important.
It was student council was a fantastic
Yeah.
group to work with at the last school. So,
Great.
that would be one good option.
And you're talking about the technology thing. They're more in touch, in my opinion, with the cutting edge thing. So maybe they know some stuff that we haven't thought of, or
Very true.
get some good ideas.
Very true.
Anybody else to have any input for Scott or questions or? You
Well,
out?
once again, I'll just wrap by saying I'm here for you. I'm your support. So, you guys haven't really afforded me a whole lot of opportunity to do that, but
Right,
that's one of the reasons I'm here for. So
right.
don't hesitate, if you ever do have a question or an idea, to give me a call.
Like I said, we're at a good point, I think, to start all this because we're coming out of this thing, I believe, and economy's still cooking along, starting to pick up a little bit. Maybe you're at a point where you can invest some more of your time. The budget's coming around, so it's a great time to do something like this, I think.
Which we've been really fortunate, I just might let you all know, we've been really fortunate that we haven't been nearly as impacted as some communities have been, for whatever reasons. I think one of the things is that we've had a strong real estate market here, which our real estate market has been stronger than a lot of other communities, although regionally it's been really hot. But I think that's one of the driving factors. The fact that a not insignificant portion of our sales tax revenue comes from our car dealers, which cars have been just flying off the lot during the whole COVID period. I think just by virtue of while we have had certain segments that have been impacted, I don't need to tell you, the hospitality, bars, restaurants, obviously they've been impacted. but I think maybe impacted less here than other locations that were a little more ham-fisted about things. But, you know, don't read too much into that comment. I'm just saying, I think we've weathered the storm to this point a little better than some other communities, and we're pretty fortunate that we haven't had nearly as much of budgetary impacts as I think a lot of other communities have. I think we've been fortunate.
So what does your timeline look like? Are you gonna maybe update us in May or
Yeah, I'll
Approaching
update you as quick as I can.
April, maybe too soon? Probably.
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, the last meeting, the last council meeting in April is when the budget will be approved, so
Right.
I wouldn't even have anything concrete until May anyway, so.
Right. We're so excited over this though, so we
Well,
want to hear
good.
more.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, we appreciate that presentation, Scott.
Absolutely.
Well, if we don't need to approve any of this or anything, there's nothing to really approve, so we just, if anybody else has a question for Scott, now would be your chance. If not, we're gonna move on. Do you have anything else, Scott?
I might mention one other thing. Because it came up, if there are anybody else that hasn't sent in your statement of economic interest to the county clerk, if you want to, we will also send those in for you since you're doing this in regards to your service to this community. So I'll wait to the end of the week or so before I turn them in, since I just did get Tony's. So if any of them I get this week, I'll go ahead and just hold
You wanna
and
do a quick
turn them in at the
quick,
same time,
poll
yeah.
and see who's got them?
Yeah, we can do that.
I know I have one at home, and I don't think I've sent it in yet. so
I definitely sent
Yeah.
mine in, so we got 2 coming. How about online? Have you guys sent yours in yet, or do you still have them?
This is Hal. I've sent mine in and got the response back already.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll do mine this week because it was mailed to my old address. So
okay. Yeah, I put it on Connie's desk already for you, Will.
thanks, sir.
I was gonna say, Scott, I apologize. I may have missed it or I haven't seen it, but can I just stop by tomorrow and pick one up and drop it off?
I'm not sure. Those actually come from the county clerk.
Oh, okay.
So, maybe there's,
I think you can print it online, Lauren. I'm not 100% on that though.
Okay.
you might
All right,
check
I'll
the
do some
county
digging
clerk's
into
website.
it. Sorry.
You might check the county clerk's website. They may have a PDF that you can print off then.
Perfect. I'll look into it tomorrow.
yeah, that's a good point, Scott. I know in the past, they had been collected here and then forwarded as a group, but I wasn't sure if we were still doing it, so I just went ahead and mailed mine.
Okay. Yeah, and we hadn't mentioned anything previously, so, thanks for reminding me, Tony.
All right. Well, with that, because you have anything else, Scott? No?
No, sir.
No other questions for Mr. Donachie?
No.
All right. We're at that point in the meeting where I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, this lovely festivity.
I motion to adjourn.
I got a Pete motioning to adjourn. I'll second it, I guess. I'm sitting here next to you. Okay. And Amy, whenever you're ready, I guess.
Doug Armour,
Yes.
Al Hoppy,
Yes.
Pete Ingold,
Yes.
Amy Missler, yes. Tony Murphy,
Yes.
Lauren Noby,
Yes.
Will Trowbridge,
Yes.
Andrea Yoakum.
Yes.
All right. I wonder if anybody's ever voted no on that.
I don't know. I've